All my life, I've thought about quitting, and I've put so much pressure on myself for it. I've constantly viewed quitting as a failure, but this time I quit, and I didn't see failure. Today, I'm going to talk about a big change in my life as of late and explain how my decision to quit is actually what's propelling me forward. But before we get into all that, I'm trying to reach 5,000 subs. It's free, and it really helps me out. So hit that button below and join the Supermoto crew today. Thanks for all your support. Now back to the video. I started this channel because of a bit of an unorthodox decision. I grew up in a really small town in what most of you would consider the country. I rode dirt bikes, I went camping, I was out in nature a lot, and the town was so small that I knew pretty much everyone in it. And due to some circumstances and the direction that I decided to point my life, last year I decided to move to the city. Now, at first, I thought I wouldn't have as many opportunities to get outside and get into nature, and I really didn't think that I would be able to ride my dirt bike. Now, that turned out to not be quite true, but it was kind of the catalyst to me starting this YouTube channel. I originally got this idea to buy a Supermoto. Well, first it was an adventure bike, and then it changed, and I did a bunch of research, and ultimately I got the idea to buy a Supermoto because a Supermoto is basically a dirt bike chassis, but you put street tires on it. Now, I had never ridden a street bike before. This would be my first street motorcycle. I would have to get my motorcycle permit and then my motorcycle license, but I was all in. I was ready for the challenge, and I did it. After a ton of research, I went out, I bought a bike, and my idea for this channel was, as a way to get to know the new city that I was living in better, I would do something that I really loved, which was riding motorcycles, riding dirt bikes, and I would just go and explore. I would ride around all the different streets, all the different neighborhoods. I would find really cool crevices and interesting places to go, all the while doing what I love to do. Now, at that time, I hadn't been riding dirt bikes for a while. I took like a year, maybe 2-year long break from riding dirt bikes. So for me, this was a way to reignite my passion with riding motorcycles. Although it wasn't dirt bikes, it was something similar. And I was really excited. And you can go back on my channel and look at some of my early videos about the bike that I got. And I was really excited at that point. But I started to realize, not really that long after I began this channel, that I didn't end up liking it as much as I thought. I said a lot of different things in my head to justify this decision. I kept going around and around about it, and I said things like, I just don't like sitting in traffic, riding on the road is just more boring. I don't know, I just didn't have as much motivation to get out and do it as much as I thought I would originally, and all this stuff. But I don't think that was the real reason. I think the real reason that I had second thoughts about street riding my Supermoto, was because I crashed. If you go back on my channel and you look at my earlier videos, you'll see a video where I crashed my brand new Supermoto. It was like the second day I was riding the thing. I took it out on ice and I had a stupid little crash. It was really dumb. I made a dumb decision that I could have easily known what the outcome was going to be, and I crashed. I was fine. I wasn't hurt at all. I was wearing pretty thick clothes. There was ice on the road, and since I was wearing pretty thick clothes, I didn't do any damage to myself other than like a little scratch on my knee. And luckily there were no cars or anything like that. Immediately, I noticed that crashing on the road with a street motorcycle, the bike damage, the amount of bike damage that this thing took from what I thought was a small little crash was mind-blowing to me. And you can see it in the video. I say that. I'm like, dude, if this would have happened on my dirt bike, I would have not done nearly as much damage as I did. It just blew my mind. And at that moment, I think I started to see some of the differences in street riding and dirt riding. And ultimately, if I think about it more, I continued to ride after the crash, but I think that crash really started to make me reconsider all of the risks. When I really think back to it, I didn't have the experience riding street bikes in and out of traffic with cars around. And I don't really trust cars either to see me. I don't have the experience to be able to avoid them and avoid dangerous situations. I also have a lot of experience on dirt bikes, but I don't have a lot of experience controlling a motorcycle on asphalt. The grip and the steering is really completely different than what I had known. And as I was saying, I started to analyze the risk, and risk is something that I had been thinking about deeply at that time. Before Supermoto, before I ever started this channel, I had a job at a scuba shop, and I worked there for about 2.5 years. Actually, when I started this channel, I still had that job. But scuba diving is actually part of the reason why I hadn't been riding dirt bikes as much for quite a long time, actually. I worked at a scuba shop, and I got to a very high level in scuba diving. I wasn't just a recreational diver. I had actually been spending a ton of time learning how to work on the equipment, and ultimately I worked my way up and I got my cave diving certification, which, if you know anything about scuba diving, getting your full cave certification is a huge milestone, and it takes a ton of work to get to that. Now, cave diving, as you all may be thinking, is definitely something that comes with a lot of risk. And throughout all my training, I was taught to always be thinking of the risk, but not letting that stop you from doing it. The key was just be prepared for the risk. Have redundancy on all of your gear, so if one thing breaks, you have a backup, not only one backup, but maybe 2 or 3 backups. And, you're learning to work as a team with your other divers, and communication underwater is very important. And, how do we solve this issue if this happens? Because you're below the ground in a flooded underwater cave, and you're hundreds of feet from the entrance. And so if something goes wrong, you can't just surface. You have to solve the problem underwater in the dark without having any way to communicate verbally with the people around you, all while maintaining a perfect trim in the water so you don't hit the bottom and disturb all the visibility and make it all go to silt. So throughout the years that I was training and taking a bunch of classes and learning this skill, I kind of got desensitized to risk. And to some degree, I think that's a good thing. If you think of occupations like things in the medical field, or EMS, or police, or firefighters, or military, these people have to be desensitized to risk to some degree, but they're also thinking of all the ways to mitigate that risk. But still, deep down, they do have to suppress thinking about that risk a little bit. And so I think that's what I got caught up in. While I was learning all this stuff, I was very excited. I felt really good about all the stuff that I was learning. And like I said, it's a huge accomplishment if you know anything about scuba diving. But I lost sight of the risk a little bit. And a couple things ended up happening that ended up making me make the decision to quit cave diving. And basically what happened was, the first thing, I had a mutual connection with somebody. I didn't really ever talk to them in depth. I was just introduced to them once, spoke to them one time, but I knew this person, and they were cave diving, and they had a buddy that they were cave diving with, and that buddy ended up getting stuck in the cave and ended up passing away. And when I heard about that death, something changed a little bit. Before, anytime I'd heard about cave diving deaths, I've been keeping up with it. I'd been in and around the community for a while, so I knew when stuff like this happened, but it had always been someone that I didn't really have a connection to. But this was the first time that I knew the person who was diving with the person who passed away. And although it was maybe just a small connection, that really hit home for me. It really started to get my gears turning and made me think about what I was doing. Now, I decided to go back down to Florida for another cave diving trip after that happened. And honestly, it was some of the most fun and most amazing, breathtaking views I've ever seen in my lifetime. I went to this one cave called Cow Springs, and I did a dive there. It was actually the last cave dive that I've done. And I went on this dive, and it is a incredible cave. The entrance is very tight, and you go down this sort of spiral, and you're in all this jagged looking black rock on the walls that is completely undisturbed from divers, because not many what we would call like recreational cave divers go into that cave. It's more of an advanced level cave. And so I was diving this cave, and there was these beautiful clay formations. I mean, just look it up. Look up Cow Springs cave diving, and you will see how freaking amazing this cave looks. I was under there, and I was thinking, I couldn't get the risk out of my mind. Like I said, it was something that had been creeping in for a while. And I thought to myself, what if that text that I sent to my girlfriend before we got in the water was the last text that she'll get, the last time that she'll hear from me? And nothing was going wrong. Everything was fine. We did all the safety and precautions, and the cave dive was going perfectly fine. But something was ticking in the back of my mind that just made me think, what if? And that was kind of the first real time that was at the forefront of my mind. Now, we finished the dive. Everything turned out fine. It was a beautiful dive. But after that, me and my dive buddy ended up having to go to another cave diver's house who does repairs of diving equipment, because we had a piece of diving equipment that needed to be repaired. And this cave diver is one of the top explorers in the world, like definitely a part of the elite group of people that are exploring underwater caves right now. And I didn't know this person really well at the time, but I was really excited to go to his house and get to hear, just different stories and all that, and just BS with him, with my buddy who knew him a lot better than I did. So we get there, and we're talking, and all of a sudden he gets a text and reads the text, paused for a minute, ended up telling us that another person that he knew really well, and like I said, this guy is like an elite level cave diver. Another person in that community had passed away just then. At that moment, when I was standing there with this elite level cave diver, he got the text that his buddy, who was also an elite level cave diver, cave explorer, had passed away while on an exploration cave dive. And that really made me take a step back and think about what risk I was taking. Now, all transparency, I was not anywhere near the level of cave diving that they were doing. But the thing is, that didn't matter. It hit so close to home to me in that moment that I was there when that person received the news of their friend passing away. I was standing 2 feet in front of him. Everything just got real. The risk that I had been thinking about had mounted up to a point, and I didn't realize it before, but that was the reason, and that was the moment that I decided to stop cave diving. Ultimately, I ended up quitting my job at the scuba shop and started doing other things, and that was right around the time when I started this channel. Haven't been diving really since then, and I started this channel, started with street motorcycles, but like I said, I got to this point where I crashed, I thought about it, I was processing the risk, and I realized I didn't want to do it anymore. So I decided to quit that too. I decided to quit riding street bikes. Not long after I started, literally only like a couple months after I started. But now what was I going to do? I had this channel, it was getting some success, I had to pivot. So I was riding dirt bikes here and there with my friends, and I started to teach my girlfriend how to ride dirt bikes. Ultimately, I realized, hey, I got to get my girlfriend on a better bike for a beginner, because I had only had like race bikes, and they are not ideal to teach someone how to ride dirt bikes on. So when I realized that, I was like, all right, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to trade my brand new, basically, Supermoto in and buy this beginner dirt bike, the CRF 250F. And I ended up doing it, and huge thanks to Kibik Cycle Sales for helping me do this trade-in process and being so accommodating, because like I said, I had only gotten it like a couple months beforehand, but they helped me with the transition really great, and I ended up getting this kick-ass little beginner trail bike. And if any of you are actual subscribers to this channel, you'll know that those videos about the CRF 250F catapulted my channel forward and built this community into what it is now. And I am so thankful for all of you guys that came to watch my videos. I really hope that I've helped you in some way to welcome you into this sport that I really love. And that's what I've really learned from quitting these two things. I had two things back to back that I decided to quit. Three things if you count the job as well. And it was a big deal, but I pivoted, and now I get to bring new people into the sport of dirt bike riding that I love so much, be someone who is welcoming rather than standoffish or egotistical. And I get to share my experience, educate, help people out, help people through this weird experience of life. And I get to do it all while having fun doing what I love to do, which I've recently got back into riding dirt bikes. I really, really love doing it. And if I wouldn't have quit and I wouldn't have listened to my gut and decided to pivot, I wouldn't be doing what I am today. I wouldn't have found what I'm now so passionate about, and I wouldn't have built the wonderful community with you all here at Supermoto. Even if you don't ride dirt bikes, I hope you gained something from listening to my story. I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Have fun out there. Soup out.